Hey, welcome back to Automate Live. We're here day 3 in Detroit. My name is Chris Luecke, host of the Manufacturing Happy Hour podcast, and today I'm joined by Zoie Rittling of OnLogic as well as Michael Maxey of ZEDEDA. Welcome to Automate.
Thanks for having us.
Great having you here, and I'm going to ask you a Manufacturing Happy Hour style question to start our conversation.
Okay.
As if we're having beers with one another. Zoie, I'll direct this one to you. How do you describe the edge to someone that is just learning about the edge for the first time? And if you're having a beverage with them, say it, one of Automate's happy hours afterwards.
Great question. I like to use the onion analogy. So if you think of a traditional network architecture, the edge is going to be that outermost layer of that architecture. So it's where the data is actually being produced on a manufacturing floor. It's where the action is happening. And then you kind of go layer by layer in all the way up to the cloud. So the edge often represents a more challenging or demanding environment. Think manufacturing facility out in an agricultural field. It's dirty, it's dusty, it's not very friendly to computer hardware. So that's what OnLogic really specializes in, is making that industrial and rugged hardware reliable in those demanding edge environments.
Excellent. And, I'll ask a similar question to you, Maxey. ZEDEDA, how do you describe what your organization does if you're having a drink with someone?
Sure, yeah. So we're an edge orchestration and management platform, which means we help our customers manage applications in these environments that Zoie just described. So think of any compute outside your data center, manufacturing floor. We provide a system to help our customers update those applications, keep them running, modernize them, deploy AI, etc.
And where a lot of this conversation will focus on today is how do we right-size AI at the edge? So I'd love to start off with this question for both of you. Zoie, if you want to lead, and then Maxey, if you want to take it from there, I think that might be the right way to approach it.
Okay. Got it. So how do we right-size AI at the edge?
Mm-hmm.
OnLogic really focuses pretty solely on the hardware aspect of that.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that we offer is extremely configurable.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'll use this example. One of our latest product launches that we're debuting here at Automate 2025 is our new Helix 520 line of industrial computers. Okay. That is built on the Intel Core Ultra, Meteor, and Arrow Lake processor chipsets. So those offer a variety of different AI accelerators and processing performance based on what our customers' needs are. So those have a built-in integrated GPU, an NPU, and a dedicated GPU. Mm-hmm. If our customer wants it, so you can do some or all of those options for AI acceleration at the edge. Mm-hmm. What we're seeing when it comes to right-sizing hardware at the edge is you don't have to throw an NVIDIA RTX at every single application that has AI in it. So that's where we come in, have those conversations with our customers, really try to understand what their applications are, what their needs are, the environment that they're deploying into, and then make a recommendation that's totally customized and suited for their particular use cases at the edge.
Awesome. And
yeah,
Max,
maybe just building on that. Edge by default means constrained, right? It's not in the cloud where you can burst and spin up new virtual machines. So right-sizing the hardware is super important, but also right-sizing the software also becomes important, right? You don't want a giant bloated operating system that consumes your entire device, and then you're not able to run workloads on top. So you'll want to think about, how much data you store, how the size of your operating system. You'll want to think about like how you do security. You can't replicate your entire enterprise down onto an edge device. So you have to think about it a little bit differently and right size not only the hardware size, but the software stack on top.
Well, I think what's important about the topic of right sizing right now is a lot of companies, I believe, are still figuring out what their edge strategy, AI strategy, data strategy is, whatever you want to call it, right? They all tie together. They're trying to figure that out. Where are you seeing a lot of organizations get stuck right now, Will? Right, or what are you seeing as some of the pitfalls they're making when they're trying to, come up with a better strategy for how they approach, AI at the edge, but maybe they just don't know how today? What pitfalls are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, maybe to jump in. we've sort of taught our industry and our technical people in the world that you can build it all in open source and you can do it yourself really quickly, right? And I think a lot of that was true in the cloud, because the cloud comes with hardware, it comes with operating systems, it comes with people to manage all of that. But on the edge, it's very different, right? When you're deploying a device in the middle of nowhere for 7 to 10 years, right? The access is different, the security is different, the capabilities are different. So you need to think about and use a strategy for better managing that whole process, right? So it's a little bit different than the cloud. I think that, starting with a strategy around what you need today, but leaving room for growth, because these things will change, right? And especially when you bring AI into the picture, like it's changing so rapidly that you need to plan ahead and think about a platform strategy, not an application strategy. And that's really what we kind of coach our customers around, is think about like, it's not just the one thing you want to do today. You'll need to protect it. You'll need to change it over time. And you're going to end up want to bring in more applications over time as well. So it's a platform strategy.
I also think people get very tied to a new AI, like specific application, the shiny new toy, without thinking holistically about the ecosystem that has to support it and how it has to integrate with that ecosystem. So OnLogic focuses on the hardware, as we discussed, but we're also building out a partner ecosystem, which includes ZEDEDA, to help manage that integration a little bit more smoothly and think holistically about the ecosystem rather than just one piece of the puzzle.
Well, I think this is actually, I'd love to talk about this partnership specifically, but partnerships in general, because what would be your advice to manufacturers, logistics companies, etc., on being strategic around their AI partners? Because this is an area that I believe our industry has the approach of, most folks are like, I'm not going at this alone. I'm going to find a bunch of different people that know how to do it. So maybe reflecting on your own partnership, what would be your tips when manufacturers are looking for their AI partners, in this case, AI at the edge? Zoe, maybe you start this one and Max, you follow.
Yeah. Great question. I would say look for providers who are making your life easier when it comes to that integration and thinking holistically about the ecosystem, and how the different layers of that tech stack actually integrate with one another. That's really why we formed the partnership, because we didn't want to, just provide people with a computer and say, go, good luck, have fun.
Yeah.
We wanted to be able to provide more complete solutions and bring more value to our customers. And we wanted this partnership to be like hitting the easy button for manufacturers. So talk to people who are thinking holistically and seeing the larger picture.
Yeah. Max, anything you would add to this?
Yeah, I would add that, the industry is long bought single purpose solutions from, the large manufacturers of the world, where it's all integrated, it's tightly coupled. And I think that's changing significantly in the market. As you see more commodity hardware, more commodity operating systems, AI workloads that aren't necessarily tied to a specific vendor. They maybe work across all your systems instead of an individual system. So it's breaking apart monoliths that's happening in the industry, and when you do that, you also need that level of support and security and trust in the solution, right? And that's where these partnerships start to make a lot of sense, right? We work really closely with OnLogic and others. We do factory manufacturing, we do security in the factory, all these sorts of like appliance-like features that are coming from platforms that are very flexible and expandable. So that's what I would think about when your partnerships is make sure that in the end, when you put this solution together, you can sleep at night and your security guy can sleep at night and it's going to work for the next 10 years. And that's kind of the partnerships we build.
We've been talking, I'd say somewhat technically about this topic right now, but maybe with the last 5 minutes, a nice thing to do for the audience would be to kind of paint a picture of what their operation could look like when they've right-sized their AI at the edge, for example. You're representing it both from the hardware and software standpoint. Maybe paint a picture of how the facility is operating, what they're able, like the capabilities they're able to unlock when they've been able to right-size AI at the edge.
I think the long-term promise is you don't do the boring work anymore, right? And if you're an operator of a plant and you spend time upgrading systems and sort of chasing the next security patch, it's not a great experience in life, but also you're not getting to the real valuable work, which is optimizing your production, getting things out faster, getting more dollars through your factory. So, the promise of AI is kind of unlocking that productivity for every worker. Right-sizing that also ties into that, right? If you're deploying a bunch of AI to make your life easy, but you end up spending all your time curating that AI, then it's a little bit counterproductive than what you're trying to do.
It's almost a double-edged sword then.
Fair enough, right? So, I think that's a way to think about it is it's not about replacing workers. It's about allowing workers to do the high-value tasks and really automating out and simplifying out some of the manual, painful things that we all have to do today.
Yeah. Zoe, anything you'd add to this one?
Yes. I'll come at it from the hardware perspective because I hear this from customers all the time.
Yeah.
You're not worried about the hardware. That's not a failure point for you. And when you future-proof the hardware for yourself, you're not replacing it every 18 months to 2 years and having to revalidate new platforms. Our systems have a standard life cycle of 5 to 7 years. So you're just not worrying about hardware when you could be focused on other things.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to, understand a little bit, we've been covering a lot of topics around AI at the edge, but admittedly, I'm someone that's learning about a lot of this, for the first time as well. Are there any things you wish I would have asked you that haven't come up yet that you think are worth highlighting? This is a classic way that I end a lot of my podcasts, by the way.
I would say one is, AI is moving really quickly. It's changing very quickly. And right now you see sort of two things emerging. You see one is where you're building your own AI applications, right? You maybe are a large company, you have data scientists, you have access to data, and there are a whole set of tools around allowing you to kind of build that perfect AI app for your workflow. At the same time, there's a lot of purpose-built AI stuff coming out as well. So, I guess one thing to think about as you're, entering this new era of AI is sort of a build versus buy strategy. And in the manufacturing space, there's a lot of great solutions that you may not need to build. Hiring data scientists and ML ops engineers and all of this they're in high demand. It's not an easy thing to do. So I think one of the choices you need to think about today is build versus buy. And there are pros and cons to each, obviously. A packaged application may not be ideally what you want. But that's something I think that, as you're entering this space, you should be thinking about.
Yeah. Zoe, what about yourself?
I would say, I'm coming across the build versus buy conversation quite a bit. We work with a lot of OEMs who are originally building their own hardware too. And that conversation is around building hardware and computers from the ground up is hard and it takes a lot of engineering resources. So why spin up those resources if that's not really your sole focus and your sole mission as an organization? Leave the hardware work to the people who that's really what they specialize in. So from a build versus buy perspective, that's where the hardware comes in.
Well, I appreciate you taking us through our conversation on AI at the edge. As we wrap up, Zoe, where's the best spot to connect with OnLogic?
Online on our website, onlogic.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn as well.
All right. And Maxey, what about ZEDEDA?
Yeah, ZEDEDA.com. I'm available on LinkedIn as well. Would love to chat with folks if they have questions around AI or the edge.
All right. Well, thank you both for the conversation today. We will be back here at Automate Live very soon with more conversations. We'll see you in a bit.